doing today?
We're going to ride the Ford. Let's go check it out. Got the heater going. Let's start the car. Well, maybe I have to choke it.
What's going on?
Maybe it's this or this.
Maybe it needs oil.
Yeah, not that kind of oil.
Okay.
Standard diagnostic testing. First, you should check to see if you have gas. The easiest way to do that is to remove the spark plug, and the end of it should have gas residue on it. If not, you have to check to see why you're not getting gas. Next, you should check for spark. The easiest way to check for spark is to remove the spark plug, reinsert it into the boot, and lean it up against some metal. Myself, I used the header pipe. After determining that I had gas and spark and a fairly new top end, the next culprit was the valves.
Well, what are valve clearances?
Well, if you take a look here, inside the cylinder head, you have valves, and they need specific clearance to open and close the valves at the specific time.
How do we check them?
Well, first, we need to remove our seat. If I can find the latch. After we remove our seat, we need to remove these plastic pins. In this process, it is only necessary to remove 3 pieces of cover. The one over the gas tank and the 2 on each side. Now, it is time to remove the gas tank. Make sure your gas is turned off, which mine already is. Now removing the hose from the petcock. And I will tuck this hose back here so no gas runs out. No leaks. Set that to the side. And now we have our head exposed. Okay, get my pliers. Remove my oil vent hoses. Came right off. Remove my spark plug boot. Lay that to the side. And remove another breather hose. Tuck that to the side. Now we have 3 Allen head bolts to remove. Broke that free. Removing the last screw to hold on my valve cover. Okay. Now it's time to remove the valve cover. Comes right off. Okay.
Oh, look at those shiners.
Okay. Valve cover gasket. Make sure to keep up with these washers. They are very important to sealing this valve cover when you insert your bolts. Now next, if you look down here, our valve clearance is specified at intake 0.1 to 0.2 millimeters. Exhaust is 0.2 to 0.3 millimeters. I don't know if you can see that, but it's right here under tune-up specs. Move your top dead center cap. That one fits. All right. Now we want to remove this to see if our bike is at top dead center, which is probably not. Allen head bolt. Last Allen head bolt, so we can spin the engine open. I'm gonna remove this. What you want to do is get you a 11/16 socket. Crank the engine over until you see the valves, the cam lobes pointing the opposite direction. If you look through the peephole, you should see a top center mark coming up. And there's T for top dead center. And we know this is on the compression stroke because both of our cam lobes are pointing in the opposite direction, meaning that both of our valves are closed for the compression stroke, not letting any air or gas in or out. Now, next step, we can measure our valve clearances. And to measure our valve clearances, we need a feeler gauge. This is what a feeler gauge looks like. Our intake valves should be between 0.1 to 0.2 millimeters, and our exhaust should be 0.2 to 0.3 millimeters. Let's check it out. That has 0.23, which is close enough. I don't know if you can see that on the video. It's 0.23 mm. Okay. We slide our feeler gauge between our cam lobe and our valve bucket. It goes right through. That lets you know that this exhaust is good on this valve. Check the second valve. Our second exhaust is good. Now we go to our intake. Our intake should be between 0.1 and 0.2. So we go to our smallest limit. I don't know if you guys can see this here. 0.102 millimeter. I don't know if you can see that. It's 0.102.
Yeah. There you
Okay. Now we're going to check our intake. Our intake is tight. Our other side of our intake is also tight, which means we have no valve clearance. So we have to adjust our valves. To do that, we're going to start by removing the Allen head bolts that hold the cam lobe in. Okay. tight. Use this extension to get a little bit more leverage. Okay, come over here and remove these. Remove our fourth one. It was nice tight. Okay. Remove this other one that holds on the chain guard. Remove our cam chain guard. Remove our cover to our cam, our intake cam. We're not going to be messing with the exhaust cam because the exhaust valves are in spec. Remove our intake cam guard. It has an IN on it. Intake.
What was the like clearest one that came up?
For real. Now, what we need to do is loosen our cam chain. To loosen our cam chain, it is necessary that we remove our oil breather tank. The reason we remove our oil breather tank is so that we can get to our cam tensioner, loosen up the bolt in the middle of the cam tensioner with the spring, and then remove the 2 Allen head bolts on each side. After removing those 3 bolts, the cam chain should have slack in it, being that the tensioner is not in the equation, and you can now remove your cam so you can get to your valve buckets. This is what your stock cam tensioner looks like. With all these parts removed, we should now be able to remove our cam. And our intake cam comes right out of there. We're only removing our intake cam because our exhaust cam valves were good, well, in spec. Next, I'm going to remove the valve buckets so we can get to the shims. I use a magnetic pickup. The reason I use that is because the magnetic pickup picks up the valve bucket and the valve shim, even though the inside of the valve bucket is also magnetic. removing my second valve bucket. Remember to keep these in order because both of these have different valve clearances, which means they have different shims, and you don't want to put the wrong shim on the wrong side. Our intake specs are from 0.1 to 0.2 millimeters, and our exhaust is 0.2 to 0.3 millimeters. Being that I had no clearance, I'm going to subtract the biggest service limit from my intake, which is 0.2. You keep repeating this process until you have the correct amount of valve clearance. The reason we're subtracting the 0.2 is because we don't know how much valve clearance we have, so we have to keep subtracting, which means going to a smaller valve shim until we find the right valve shim for the right clearance. I purchased this kit for about 90 bucks at the my local Suzuki dealer. But they have some cheaper online. You probably get one for about 50 to 60 bucks from Amazon or eBay. I also want to add that once you get your valve clearances in the right spec, you also have to retime your motor. On the intake cam, there's a 3, it should be pointing straight up. On the exhaust cam, there's a 2, it should also be pointing straight up. Between the 3 and the 2, there should be exactly 15 pins starting at the 3 to the 2. After you have done that, your motor is in time. Now that we have properly adjusted our valve clearances, hook the gas tank up and she should start right up. I'm not going to run it for long because we do not have the valve cover on. And we're done. Like and subscribe.
Try it, boss, right here.